So there's a whole bunch of prefabs, meshes, textures, and materials. So the space scene construction kit, then. You remember that when we clicked on create space scene prefab here, it just created a random universe. And here we can go into some detail now. And that is, if I were to create, let's actually delete this one. And then we'll go through step by step on these elements. The first thing, if I just create stars, you'll remember I mentioned that that was a 8-sided texture that is used as a skybox in the very far distance. I can create that one, and you'll see that it'll just pick any texture with a random star count and a random background color. I can change this to, I want a high star count and I want a blue background shade. I can create that. Let's play this one. Let's have a look in a bit bigger scale. I've got no light source now really, so it looks quite dark, but let's have a look. So let's create another one with just black. Oh yeah, these, I was wondering what these blotches are here, but that's actually the the fading, it's more apparent now. It's the fading, let's have a look, we'll disable these on space fog, space particles. There we go, caught myself out there. Press play. So these are just the very, very distant stars. Again, don't use particle effects for these, they'll kill your machine. So it's one single texture that's used for all 6 spacebox sides. After the stars, we can add nebulas, and nebula count, that's how many of these meshes it should create, and not how many textures it should use, but how many nebulas it should add. So anything from none to 32 different nebula objects it can create. We can filter this on brightness, so these are categorized. Yeah, I'll show you this so you know how it works. You can drop your own materials and stuff in here if you feel comfortable, but each nebula material is categorized using, I say tags, but I think it's called something else. It's called labels in Unity. And I've got labels on each one saying brightness, medium, color red, complexity high, style cloud, and what else have we got? Style dark matter. So all of these materials have been categorized using these labels. And it's using these labels that the script will know that, okay, so if you select nothing first, we just want dark and, oh sorry, very dark and dark textures. That's all we want. We don't want any of the bright stuff. Then when I click create, just want to add the nebulas now. Then it knows that, okay, I'm going to create 15 nebulas, and I'm only going to pick the materials to texture these nebulas using stuff which is tagged as, or labeled, very dark and dark. So let's have a look. This should be quite a dark scene now. And it is. You can also go down to, say, colors. This is a mask if you're wondering. I can click nothing, everything, or I can select a number of so blue and pink, for example. It'll pick nebulas that are blue, pink, or both. But it won't pick a nebula that's maybe blue and yellow, obviously, because it's not ticked, but just blue and pink. We'll override that. So now you see that it created just a bunch of blue nebulas for me that are dark and very dark. We also have nebula styles, and that is no scientific thing to it. If it looks a bit cloudy, I've named them cloudy. If it's streaky, I've named them streaky. Let's have a look. Okay, here we ran into, whoops, no nebulas match your criteria. Please revise your settings. And that's because you'll come up with combinations here that aren't populated in terms of materials yet. And there were no nebulas that were very dark, pink and blue, and streaky. So, tough luck. but you'll probably find that there's going to be other ones that do work. Let's have a look. If we go back to everything, and then we select cloudy. There we go. Oh, nothing cloudy. Here we go. Then it's just cloudy looking nebulous. And if I were to change this to, I just want streaky nebulous, then it just creates a streaky nebulous. We'll bring that back to everything for now. We've also got Nebula Complexity, and if we drag that one down to 0, it'll create nebulas that are quite just smooth and cloudy and foggy looking. If we do it in the middle of the slider, it will range from the shadiest of smooth nebulas to the most complex ones. Whereas if I put the slider at the very top, it will just use really complex, and by complex I mean it could be dark and bright ones, but they'll be like just a lot of blotchy type of nebulas, and you might not always want them. So it's up to you how you want to combine this complexity. We'll leave that one at in the middle for now. And finally, with nebulas, you also have something called texture count, and this is where if I select very low here, and I'll create the spacing, you'll see that all the nebulas, in this case, it'll just be 2 different materials that's used, and that's to conserve. If you're worried about your distribution size or the memory use, you can create combinations that just use 2 textures, in this case, on very low. You can still make them look like it was something like really complex, because you can't really see the repetitiveness, even in a small count like this. And on the other side of the coin, you've got very high, and if I create that, then it's gonna really go crazy on the number of materials that it chooses. So that was the nebulous. More about memory and performance later on in a later video. So we've got nebulas, we've got stars. We want to then add some galaxies. You can select galaxy count, either random, so we'll leave it at that. And you can specify colors or any type of colors of the galaxies. You can specify distance if you want them to be close and big, or just distant ones. And again, if I take very close and close away, then and 3, it'll create 3 galaxies that are either distant or very distant. And it created some very distant ones there. You can also specify, let's bring this back, if it should be a light source and if it should have a flare. And then you'll see that it lights up the scene because it creates a point light with an infinite range at the location of that galaxy there. There we go. And for now I'll create without light source, because the light sources will start competing. I've got light sources for my thrusters. I'm going to add a star then. That's a light source. In this case, I don't really want the galaxies to be light sources anymore. We'll move on to planets. And planets, you can select the mesh quality and whether it should be low, medium or high polygons. You can say how many planets you want in your scene, and by default it just drops down to 1, so 1 planet. You could create loads of them if you want. And climate, these are categorized just like the nebulas are categorized. These are categorized, I don't think there was a scientific thing for this either, but Earth-like, icy planets, desert, gas, molten and alien. That's the categories I chose. So you can select which, by default it'll pick any of these climates. Distance, it won't really create any very distant planets because you don't really see them, but it's there if you want to. We'll take distant away as well, actually. So you just create very close or close planets. Rotation, it defaults to none or slow, because usually in a game you just don't want a really fast spinning planet, so it doesn't really make sense, because you wouldn't really see it rotating with your eye unless it was some sort of a really high velocity planet. I don't know. But it is there anyway, so you can specify how fast it should rotate. You've got planet rings, and how common they should be when it creates random planets. And by default it's rare, so some planets will have rings but most will not. But you can increase if you want always, all planets you want rings on. Moons, it is specify whether a planet should have a moon or two or none. So based on this filter, it'll create planets with either no moons or it'll create a planet with one moon. You can also specify how far away the moon should be, and that's either very close, distant, or very distant. And finally, the orbit speed of the moon. And again, you'd probably want to keep these stationary or slow, because otherwise it'll just look out of time, unless you want to look accelerated. So you might want to keep them like that. So if we add a planet now, let's have a look where that ended up. It's created it, and here we go. In this case, it turned out to be a ice winter world planet. Let's have a look at that one. Again, I've got no light source because I switched that off, so that's why it looks so dark at the moment. We can either create just the light for now. Create. Let's have a look. I'm lost. Directional. Let's do that one. And now we have some light on the planet. And if we look at a few of the settings again, we can do, you can either, if you aren't happy with the climate of the planet, you can go to the planet materials, and let's just drag Earth on it. There we go. Then you'll have Earth here instead with the night lights. We could also, just for demonstration, we could click on the planet, and we said that it should be stationary or very slow rotating, and it's configured this planet to have a rotation around the z-axis at stationary, so slow. If we want to see what it just looks like, you could increase that. So 2. You'll see now that the planet is actually rotating instead. And let's just pick Jupiter's cousin as well instead. If you want to have a look at a gas giant instead. So I plan to add a lot of these planet textures in the future. So these are the 40 ones that comes with the package as it is now. But again, by the time you watch this, it might have increased a lot. And so that was the planets. We've got one thing left to create, and that is, we'll disable these, and we want to create a local star, which is basically like our sun, something nearby that we can look at. You can select the color of the star, the size of it, whether it should be small, medium or large, whether it should be a light source, and usually this one should be, and you can specify intensity, which is also customized. You can customize that point light after as well, and whether the color should be white, which you probably usually want to have, or if you want to have it the star color, so it'll throw a blue light or a yellow light. And finally, if it has a flare or not. So let's just add a random star and see what we end up with. And we can rotate it into view as well. So look, there we go. And let's move out of sight. There we go. So he created an orange star. And it's got this, it's called prominence, but it's like cascades of fire and stuff like that. You can also customize the particle system a little bit if you think they're too big or too small. But these is what they look like for now. So that's your star, and if we want to change that one to, let's say we want a blue large star that also casts the star color light, and which is high intensity. So look, so it'll overwrite that one. Again, it created it out of view, so I'll just rotate it for now. There we go. We'll disable this original, or we created this directional light before. I'll take that one away. And there we go, there's the new blue star that was added, that lights up the scene. So that summarizes this video and how the different elements work and how it picks the right textures and how you can pick them manually. I'll create a more detailed video on manual tweaking later on, but thanks for watching this tutorial, and looking forward to seeing you in the next one.